On the Corniche Road, 1 kilometer north of Luxor Temple and halfway to Karnak Temple, is a museum of ancient Egyptian art, or Luxor Museum. The old section, which was opened in 1975, is housed in a modern building designed by Mahmoud El-Hakim. A new extension was built in the 90s with fresh appliances of lighting the objects on display. The range of artifacts on display are far more restricted than Egypt's main collection in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. This was, however, deliberate, since the museum prides itself on the quality of the pieces it has and their advantage of being discovered and brought from the Thebes area. The interior of the museum is attractively laid out on 2 levels, and the many valuable items in the collection are excellently displayed and lit. The statue of King Amenophis III in reddish granite impresses the visitor once he enters into the entrance hall. In the rotunda is a gilded head of goddess Hasur, the cow goddess, who represents motherhood. It was found in King Tutankhamun's tomb. The statues displayed represent pharaohs who ruled Egypt mostly during the New Kingdom, when Luxor was the capital of Egypt. Some of them came out in pieces, but with the head well preserved and the name of its owner written, the pharaohs' names were known, like the head of King Sesostris III that was found in Karnak in 1970. Queens also had valuable statues, like the head of the canopic jar of Queen Tuya. The black statue is the one in which only the head of the seated person appears in details, while his whole body is shaped squarely. There are parts of temples which still bear traces of colors on display, to show how Egyptian coloring is too perfect to be defeated by time or place. Sphinxes were placed inside temples. Each represents a king with the body of a lion and is made of alabaster or limestone or granite. Among the most striking items on show is a collection of 26 exceptionally well-preserved New Kingdom statues that were found buried in a cache nearby Luxor Temple in 1989. The royal mummies of 2 pharaohs were put on display in Luxor Museum in March 2004. One of them belongs to King Amasis I. It's on display in the hall called the Glory of Egypt, as King Amasis I achieved the greatest glory for Egypt when he fought and defeated the Hyksos, who had been occupying Egypt for 100 years, during which Theban princes ruled in the south, and Amasis was one of them. The other mummy is said to belong to King Ramses I, who ruled during the 19th dynasty in 1306 BC. The mummy was stolen from Egypt long time ago and sold at first to the Museum of Niagara Falls, then to Carlos in Atlanta in the United States, successfully Egypt managed to get it back where it belongs. The gold collar of courage was offered to Queen Iyahotep, who ruled in the 18th dynasty. It was found in her tomb in the Ra Abul Naga cemetery in the west bank of Luxor. The memorial axe of King Amasis I is on display, and it was used in his fight against Hyksos. There are a number of cases containing a variety of objects like jewelry made of gold, silver, and electrum, and copper, and semi-precious stones. There are also grave goods made of wood, and votive tablets, and prehistoric pottery, and bowls, and amulets, and foundation deposits. The Medal of Honor and Bravery was offered to the courageous leaders of the Egyptian army. A colored stele was found in Asyut with a representation of one of them wearing two golden collars. The soldiers were also remembered and represented on a stele called the Soldier Stele. They were celebrating their victory, which was a continuous event since most of the pharaohs of the New Kingdom led successful campaigns and wars against the enemies of Egypt. The Medjay tribes who came from Sudan participated in the Egyptian army and were role models in hard fighting and obedience. Of the seventh pylon of Karnak Temple, a cache of statues was discovered between 1902 and 1909. It included a statue of an unknown lady cut out of one block of granite stone. It belongs to the era of King Amenophis III, one of the mighty pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, who ruled Egypt from 1405 BC to 1367 BC. She holds the Ankh symbol of life with one hand and stretches the other over her lap. Goddess Hathor, the cow goddess, is the one represented in this black granite statue. Her crown is the two horns of the cow and the sun disk in between. She was the symbol of motherhood and beauty, and the other image of Isis. The masterpiece in the museum is a magnificent statue of King Amenophis III, cut out of red quartzite solid shining stone. The richness that Egypt has reached in his time is shown clearly in that fine statue that was sculptured with accurate details. The double statue of god Ammon and his wife Amunat was cut out of fine white limestone. This happened during the time of King Ramesses II, whose cartouche or royal name was carved under the feet of goddess Amunat. Harris Papyrus, that was written by King Ramesses III, mentioned an unbelievable number of statues that were dedicated to Ammon in Karnak Temple. But with the great 20th century discovery of the cache in the temple, this number seems reasonable, for the number of statues discovered by Legrand in 1902 was 17,000 statues. Some statues were found broken, like these two black basalt statues, but others were fine pieces of art. The Sphinx of King Thutmose III is a great example of the perfectly sculptured royal statues. The lady statue represents his wife, Queen Isis. God Horus is that unique celestial god who is a main member of the Osirian family, being the son of god Osiris, the god of the dead, and who has reached a popular level of worshipness that was unmatched in the Egyptian history. Ta-Weret is a protective goddess of the women in labor. Her name means the Great. She is represented in the form of a female hippo, with huge breasts, lion's claws, and a crocodile's tail. King Ramesses II statue was cut out of marble. Here, he kneels to present offerings to the god. He is not the only king who has a headless statue. King Thutmose III too owns a black granite statue without a head. These statues were placed in massive numbers, apparently in a hurry, by the priests who wanted to protect and preserve the valuable images of their pharaohs, even if they had to hide them under the ground. This is a part of the wonderful collection of Karnak cache that was discovered under the ground of the court in front of the seventh pylon of the temple. It's now possible to believe that the number of the statues in Ammon Temple was 86,486 statues. The ancient Egyptians believed that life is nothing but a continuous cycle of birth, childhood, youth, aging, death, and rebirth, and to achieve it, certain elements had to be well preserved, including the body, which needed to be mummified and placed in a good coffin that carries the features of the deceased, to make it easy for the soul to recognize it when the time comes for it to dwell in its owner. The coffin depended on the wealth and social class of the deceased. For example, the anthropoid coffin of Padi Ammon, the high priest of Ammon, is composed of a body and its lid. The interior and exterior are richly covered with religious scenes of deities and sacred texts and signs, and the deceased himself praising the gods. God Anubis is a jackal-headed god who sits at the gates of the tombs and guards the cemetery. His black color symbolizes death. He also watches over the process of mummification, and thus he is called the Lord and Protector of the necropolis. Goddess Nephthys is a lady of the house, and her crown states her name, Nebet-Het. She mourns the deceased with her sister Isis and protects him with her long wings. Before the body is buried, it had to be taken on a boat to make a pilgrimage to Abydos temple, where god Osiris, the god of the dead, reside. Two women of the family reincarnate Isis and Nephthys and mourn him. All these rituals combined are basics of the creed of immortality, by which the ancient Egyptian conquered his fear of death, knowing that it doesn't terminate life. Mummification has always been the greatest scientific achievement of the ancient Egyptian. No wonder they kept it as a sacred, mysterious operation, prohibited to be known and practiced except by specialist priests. Some of the materials used were left in tombs, especially the liquids that surrounded organs. At first, the body was soaked in natron salt to dehydrate it and melt the fats from 40 to 70 days. The belly was emptied from its organs, which were placed in 4 jars. They are the stomach, the liver, the intestines, and the lungs. These jars are called the canopic jars. Their lids take the shapes of the 4 children of Horus. They are Amnesty, who has a human head, guarding the liver, Habi with a monkey's head for the lungs, Duamut-F, the jackal for the stomach, and Qebeh-Senu-F, the falcon, to protect the intestines. The tools are composed of a chisel made of flint stone and a spatula used in emptying the skull and extracting the brain, and needles to sew the openings and wounds. The scissors, the cutter, the forceps, the brush, and the puncher were all used as well. The body was washed internally with palm wine and dried with salt. And after it's totally dry, either by the sun or by being placed in ovens, it is stuffed with linen soaked in resin and sawdust to take a normal shape. Then it's totally ointed with aromatic oil and liquid resin. Wrapping the body with linen comes as a last step in this long sophisticated process of mummification. The number of wraps differs according to the financial capability of the deceased. Mummification is one of the miracles of the civilization makers, and modern science is incapable of solving its mystery till today.